Well, hello there, and this is Auntie, and I am here with an episode of, yeah, I watched it. There is a show on Netflix called The Monster, the Jeffrey Dahmer story. And honey, we're going to talk about this thing tonight. Okay. Are y'all ready? Let's get into it.
Everybody needs a sweet old auntie. Everybody needs
with a whoop whoop and a boop boop
auntie
boop.
that everybody needs.
You can make this up.
Now you know that these are some crazy motherfuckers.
Everybody needs a sweet old auntie.
So why even
Aunties and lies, sweet old auntie. Aunties that wait. Are you okay? Are you okay?
Well, welcome back, everybody. And this is Auntie. And if this is your first time being here, please like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. And to all of my new subscribers, thank you all so much for hitting that subscribe button and joining one of the best families on YouTube. And to all of my nieces, nephews, and my members who have been here with me for the long haul. Thank you all so much for your continued support. You all, tonight we are going to be discussing the monster, the Jeffrey Dahmer story. And I'm telling you right now, Hunty, this thing has kept me up. I don't know about y'all, but this thing has kept me up. It is amazing that I grew up during this time when he was, doing what he was doing with the whoop whoop and the boop boop boop. And I don't even remember it. I don't know if I was too young to remember it or I was just out there in them streets. But as I began to look through the dates and the timeline and all that kind of stuff, I realized that I lived through this and I don't remember it. And but this was really a wild story and a sad story. Netflix, there has been several documentaries on this or documentaries on this story about Jeffrey. This story has been told from a lot of perspectives. In my opinion, this story was told um from the view of the survivor. Um and this was wild. It's just amazing the things that this man was able to get away with based on privilege and where he was. And he, in my opinion, when I looked at it, right, looked at the whole thing, he made sure that he was in the right neighborhood at the right time where nothing that Black people or people of color was saying was believable, acceptable, or and people who were um same gender loving people. In my opinion, this is why and how he was able to get away with all of the things he was able to get away with. He was in a community of people who weren't believed because of the color of their skin, because of their economic standing in the world. It wasn't a good time, like back in those days, especially when it came down to the AIDS epidemic and homosexuality and the connection that people attempted to make between those two things. And so when I watched this, I watched, how the police officers, and even Jeffrey Dahmer's father, um, thought that, homosexuality at the time was taboo or a bad thing. And he used that to his advantage. He knew exactly what he was doing, in my opinion. Um, just got buck wild with it. And watching the story of Glenda, who was the next door neighbor. I think that I read somewhere else that she really wasn't the next door neighbor. That they used some creativity to tell the story. It appears that there was a woman by the name of Nicole, who was actually the person who was living in the building. Glenda, allegedly, was living across the street, but she was the one who was making the calls and all that kind of stuff. And so I'm not sure of how true that is, because there are so many different versions of this, right? Of his story. Hey boo. Hey. um there's so many different versions of the story, and all, right. But I really was, excuse me, y'all. Sure, this too big, like everything else I wear. But nevertheless, this is the woman who was the character, one of the main characters of the show. Um, Viewer discretion is advised on this video. If this is something, that um may bother some of you, if you are not into details and all that kind of stuff, yucky details about death or Jeffrey Dahmer's story. I understand if you exit. I totally understand if you exit. So this show, of course, as I said, is on Netflix. And it's a season 1. It's a limited run series on Netflix. There were 10 episodes, and I'm going to try to break this video down by those episodes and just kind of talk about it from that perspective. Again, viewer discretion is advised. Some of the information that is going to be talked about in this video may be disturbing to some of you. Okay, so on episode 1, it was called episode 1, and it was basically the story was told in reverse in the beginning. And so in episode 1, we met Jeffrey. We met Jeffrey basically at a bar. And there was a neighbor that was living next door to him named Miss Glenda. And there was a stench that was continuously coming out of the apartment. We saw her, really disturbed about the stench that was coming out of the apartment, and, basically asking Jeffrey, what it was. And so, he was talking about that, some meat went bad and all of that, which is the excuse that he continued to give her throughout the episode. But as we went through the series, we realized that she started putting one and one together, coming out with 2, that this man was, actually killing people in his apartment. She didn't really know to the extent that stuff was going on, but so we see Jeffrey in in this bar, right? And I think it was like, what they call a gay club. And, it was these three guys together and all of this. And so Jeffrey was basically posing or presenting himself as a photographer and was asking these guys, hey, do y'all want to, do this photography, X, Y, and Z, knick-knack, paddywhack, give a dog a bone. And so one of the guys took him up on the offer. Now, as a viewer, I'm sitting there thinking, bitch, don't go with don't go with him. Did you all find yourself in this series like screaming at these people and saying, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, don't go with him? Oh my God, right? Because, at this point, we've all heard stories, but, we haven't heard it this way. Okay. I'm talking for me and maybe for some of you all. I ain't never heard it this way. So I'm screaming, yelling. I'm like, yes, yes, Q sweet. She said screaming, crying, yelling. Absolutely. I found myself talking to the television. And one of the things about this is that everything was dark. I don't care if you turn the brightness up on your television, everything, the backdrop and the sceneries and the apartment building and everything just made you feel doomed. I can't imagine living in that apartment at that time and coming out of there thinking that I could be anything than what I was, right? It was just so dark and dank, the hallways, while it had light in it, it just seemed, real project-y, like one of those real serious projects where you go through this heavy metal door into these apartment buildings. The apartments back in the day were really, really big apartments and everything, but it just seems like it didn't make a difference what you did. It was always going to be a doom and gloom type of situation that you were living in. And so the expectation of having peace and having people living around you who got some damn sense. And I'm just saying, from my perspective, I felt very dark even watching it from the begin. So we see him at this club and everything, and he is dancing around in the club, and he goes up to these three guys. He offers for them to come back to his apartment to take pictures. I think a lot of these people just did not have great jobs because he was offering money quite a bit of the time, and that's what made a lot of the people go with him because they were either in need of money or something from him. And he came off, really clean cut, tall, white guy, blonde hair, blue eyed, you know what I'm saying? Just, really innocent and nice and all of this kind of stuff. But he was never, he was never that. And so he gets this guy into his apartment, and then he, takes this concoction. Later on, we find out how he began to do this, right? And so he gives this guy this concoction and a drink. And I'm thinking to myself, how many times have I gone out with, someone, close friend or whatever, and they fix a drink and you just drink it? But for a stranger, I probably would never have done that. And when you're looking at this from this perspective, you're looking and saying, bitch, I would never take a drink from somebody that I don't know. But back in that day and time, and you know, people had more trust. They trusted each other more than I guess they do today. Right now, and even back then, I don't think I would have ever taken a drink. I even knew, growing up, if you leave your drink at a bar or at the table, even if it's with friends, you don't come back and drink that same drink. That drink is over and done, bitch. When you get up from that table, you ain't going back no more, no more, no more, no more. I'm not going back to that drink. And, to everybody who is watching this video, don't, if once you leave a drink, it's finished because you don't know what's in that drink. And even with people that you are acquaintances with, you don't ever know what people's real motives are for being in your life. Some people say that people in your life for a reason or for a season, and bitch, you better know what that is. Okay, you better know what that reason and that damn season is. And so he takes the guy back to his apartment and everything because the guy, thinks he's going to be photographed and all of this. And of course, he goes into the kitchen, he fixes him, a drink, and inside of that drink is a sedative. And so, of course, the guy became very suspicious. Now, when we listen to the testimony, because there's actually testimony out there that this guy has given, he said that he wasn't a drinker anyway. He said the first drink that Jeffrey had given to him, and this is in his court documents, he said the first drink Jeffrey gave him was a beer. And so I guess, Jeffrey started switching because the guy said that he actually switches back and forth from one personality to another personality, right? Hold on, let me make sure I give y'all his name. I apologize. I had this up, but I don't now. So I apologize. Tracy Edwards. So Tracy said that he wasn't a drinker. He said that he gave him a beer the first time. And then after that, Jeffrey changed and then he gave him a rum and coke. He said because he wasn't a drinker, it didn't taste good to him anyway. So he barely drank the drink, which was fantastic for him not being a drinker. But imagine if you was a person who was accustomed to drinking. And so they, Jeffrey eventually pulled out a knife on him, took him into his bedroom because the wall between him and the next door neighbor was really, really thin. And so when he go take him into the bedroom, he has some distance between him and the next door neighbor. Although she could hear a lot of the stuff that was going on through the vent, he wanted to make sure that he got him into his lair, if you will. So when the guy went into the room, he saw blood on the mattress. So he was like, bitch, I'm in trouble. I am in trouble. And so he said that, Jeffrey pulled a knife out on him and when, he was looking out the window and put some handcuffs on him, but he only got one arm. He wanted he wanted Tracy to put the other handcuff on him, but he kept telling him, I don't need that on me. I'm cool. I'm not going to leave you. All this stuff. You ain't got to do all of that. So he managed with, to not get the handcuffs completely on both of his arms. So he wasn't, um, um, he wasn't able to subdue him that way. Plus, he knew that Tracy Edwards had not drunk all of the drink. So he had a knife on him, handcuff on one arm, and made him sit down and watch The Exorcist. And he said, Tracy Edwards' testimony during his court hearing or testimony at court, he said that he would go in and out of consciousness, in and out of this different personality. And they asked him while being on a witness stand, what did he mean by? He said his whole facial structure would change when he would go into this and he would be mumbling and chanting. And so Tracy said that he had already made a decision that, bitch, I'm jumping out the window. Fuck what you heard. Fuck what you understand. I am going out of the window. And so he said that, he had asked him if he could use the bathroom. And he said the first time he went into the bathroom that Jeffrey was behind him. And so he asked him, did he look at your cucumber. And he was like, no, he wasn't sizing me up or anything. And they came back out. They continued to talk. He continued to look more at the exorcism. And during his time, he was still trying to get him to, allow him to lay down so he could put the other handcuff on him, but he wouldn't. He said, bitch, no, I'm not going to do that. So he said that he had Jeffrey had him come back out again. They sat back in the front room because he said that, Jeffrey wanted to give him another little drink. And so he said, as he was sitting there, he had already made up in his mind he was going out of the window. And then he decided that he wasn't going to go out the window. He asked him if he could use the bathroom again. He said this time, Jeffrey did not go into the bathroom with him. Tracy also talked about them tussling in the bedroom, and that Jeffrey had 2 knives, and one of the knives fell up underneath the bed, bitch. And so he said that, when he went to the bathroom the second time, he punched Jeffrey in his face and managed to get out of the room. Now he's running down the hallway. Miss Glenda living next door. She a nosy ass, right? But she was a nosy ass with a purpose, because she knew that there was something going on over in Jeffrey's apartment. They have actual police tape, audio tapes of Miss Glenda calling back the mother and back every time something went on. But because she was a black woman back in the 80s and the 90s, they didn't give a damn. They would not send police out there. She would call, tell them, I think there's something going on. There's a stench. She would go down to the landlord or the leasing agent at the time and tell him it's smelling real shit across the hallway. It's coming through my vents. Something is the fuck going on with Jeffrey. But all of her calls, everything, every attempt that she tried to make in order to had them to come out and at least search this apartment, went on deaf ears. Bitch, nobody would listen to her. And it is just, it was horrific the way that she was treated. And she was treated like that, I believe, because number one, she was a black woman. Number two, goes without saying. And she was poor. And it didn't make a difference what she said. They ain't had time for her black ass. She was a nuisance to them. And the way that they treated Glenda at the end, I said, bitch, I can't. I ain't going to be able to do this. But it's real. And a lot of people say that racism and all this kind of stuff does not exist. That black people are not, or people of color are not treated poorly just based on their skin. They say that racism is still not alive and well. Bitch, yes, it is. Yes, it is. And you could see all throughout the story that they were telling. These women were not believable. They weren't affluent. They weren't living in an affluent neighborhood. And they didn't give a fuck. And it's a shame that they didn't. Not even a leasing consultant. Jeffrey's ass should have been out that apartment. They should have gone in there as a leasing agent. Let's say we're not talking about the police back in that day. The leasing agent should have made sure he went in. But he's looking at these people the way he's looking at these people. But anyway, let me not go, because I could go in and I don't want to. So the guy runs out of the apartment. He is screaming and saying, this guy's trying to kill me. He has no shirt on. He has pants on. And he has one handcuff on. So, of course, the police, he's running down the middle of the street. Some police are driving through an alley. And when they're driving through that alley, they see him. So automatically, he already got a strike against him. He black. Number two, he black, bitch, with one handcuff on his arms. So, of course, we know that a lot of that story wasn't told. It wasn't unnecessary to tell it because they had already framed our mind and gave us a glimpse into what was happening as far as race relationships were, period. So they take him back to Jeffrey's apartment. They tried to get the handcuffs off of Tracy and they were unable to do so. So they had to take him back to Jeffrey's apartment, okay, in order to get the key from him because they couldn't get the bitches off of him and they wanted to see what he was talking about. So when they went to the apartment, of course, Jeffrey being a white man with blonde hair, blue eyes, they gave him the benefit of the doubt and asked him whether or not he had done this. And he, of course, said that he did it and that they were lovers and, they were playing games. And so I guess the instinct and just God Almighty saying, I'm tired of Jeffrey. They went in to the apartment. As they began to go through the apartment, Jeffrey was lying and saying he didn't have the key. And so to the handcuffs, and the guy's out there half blitzed, right? Because he did drink some of the drink. He just did not drink all of the drink, enough to paralyze him. And so, the guy's out in the hallway, he's mumbling and all that kind of stuff, and they go in. When they go in to search, and Jeffrey says that the key is in a drawer, the police officer, of course, goes into the drawer. Once he goes into the drawer, he sees these pictures. Okay. First of all, when they came in, they was like, the stench in this mother is just like, what is this? Now, I've never smelled a dead person, but I can just imagine, bitch, if you smell a dead mouse or something like that, you know what that stench smells like. Can you imagine it being a human being who's over 100 pounds and just rotten flesh up in that month? So they get, he see the pictures, he's going through them and he realizes that they're real. Jeffrey tries to run and they, handcuffed him, they subdue him. And this is when the story unfolds. That's episode 1, right? And they are just, like, oh my God, they find this thing in there where he was using this chemical to break down it was a vat. And he had chemicals in it that was helping him to decompose all of these bodies. And it was just, like the dude that was sitting there was like, I hope you die. When Jeffrey was subdued, Jeffrey was like, you know what, I should be killed for, what I'm doing and all that kind of stuff. And I just was like, what the is going on? Just one second. So as I said, Jeffrey's killing spree, this whole series is based on the perspective of his victims, their family, and the people around Dahmer who were suspicious of his shady behavior. So in 1991 is when he got caught with, by Tracy Evans. Jeffrey had confessed to killing 17 men and boys. But they said that they believe that he has absolutely killed more. But they'll. So now the scene unfolds. Miss Glenda is outside and Miss Glenda is kirking the fuck out. And she was like, what did y'all find in here? I've been calling y'all over and over, y'all mother. And y'all just let it go on and on and on and on and on. The privilege that he got just for being who he was astounding. This bitch is doing whatever he wants to do. And he's just getting away with it. Because of the color of his skin, he automatically gets the benefit of the doubt. And because of the color of everyone else's skin, they're automatically not believed. No trust. Not credible. What the? That wasn't missed on me or anybody else. In episode 2 of Netflix, it's called Please Don't Go. They go back and they show Jeffrey's life. They show his troubles at home, his troubles at school, and his strange behavior. And in episode 3, during a Dahmer, on his own after his parents' turbulent divorce, high school senior Jeff invites a hitchhiker to his home. So in these two episodes, we begin to see Jeffrey's relationship. His mother was pregnant. When his mother was pregnant with him, she was taking all kinds of drugs. Her and the husband were always in, turmoil, always having arguments and everything in their marriage, because of her drug addiction and her weird ass behavior. Later on, in the following episodes, it came up that, this lady told her she had postpartum and that's why she was acting this way. But the father was, trying to get her together. It just was a rocky relationship. And Jeffrey, being a child, was always around, being inquisitive about different things. When he was a young boy, he was picked on because he was just weird AF, right? And so nobody really fucked with him when he was in school. And so we saw that, during all this turmoil, Jeffrey was trying to find himself. But bitch wasn't nothing to be found. So earlier on, he began to be curious about dissecting these animals. And so his father, knowing that, his son was weird, said, you know what, he's interested in this. And so we're going to start doing, autopsies and, on this roadkill. They would actually drive out, see something dead on the street, and him and his father would come home and dissect it. And Jeffrey was interested in this. And I was just like, you the mother, because that is, you the mother that's teaching him this. I was blaming the father from the beginning, the mother and the father, because there was so much turmoil that was going on in his house. And they knew that he was weird. And nobody ever tried to seek counseling for this mother. But first of all, the father wouldn't listen to him because they were so religious that they would know earthly good. And when you see people who are religious like this and fanatical and all this kind of stuff, you still got to be here on earth. Bitch, you're on earth. You're on earth. You can't live up in the clouds. You can't live in the Bible. You're not back there in Jesus' time or anything like that. Get it together, bitch, because you got to learn how to function in society. Tradition and religion can sometimes be too much put in the wrong hand. And his father, at that time, of course, as I said, it was taboo to be gay. And definitely taboo to be gay and in the church. So when Jeffrey had made several attempts to talk to his father about stuff, the father didn't want to hear it. But the father, come to find out, was weird AF too. He saw a mirror of himself, but he wanted to blame the wife for what he saw in his son. So night after night, these mothers would sit in a garage and pick up roadkill and play with the intestines and the heart. And so Jeffrey, started, bitch, he started doing this stuff on his own. So they showed an episode where he went to the school and the kids would bring the teacher the apple. I remember them days. Yes, I'm that old. And all the kids was bringing apple, but he decided to bring tadpoles. And so the teacher was like, so what is this? And he was like, tadpoles. And she was like, okay, well, thank you, Jeffrey. But of course, all the other kids is looking like he weirded in a mother up in here. And so at the end of the class, the teacher, instead of handling it the way a teacher should have handled it, one of the other little boys asked for it and she gave it to him. Well, Jeffrey saw him outside with his and was like, no, that's not yours. And so the little boy was like, she gave it to me. And so Jeffrey went out, kirked off, followed the little boy to his motherfucking house, went in his house and took the tadpoles out of there. Bitch! He got a problem with a little boy doing it. That's it. I can't do this. So anyway, Jeffrey, just started showing different things. The parents start separating. Every time the father would come home, they would be arguing. The mother would be like, get the fuck out of here. The father was like, you're just a drug addict and all of this kind of stuff. And they never thought about Jeffrey. And Jeffrey felt like everybody was leaving him. And they were. They did, damn it. When Jeffrey turned 18 years old, 17, 18 years old, both the mother went to court to leave the father and took Jeffrey's youngest brother with him. But she left Jeffrey and said he on his motherfucking own. So the father left too, bitch. And so Jeffrey grew up by himself. He started drinking and abusing beer and alcohol. And then he was wrestling with the fact of that he was having these hallucinations and having these desires that he couldn't talk to anybody about because he was under the umbrella of the church. And then to top that off, he was dealing with his sexuality big time. Trying to, get into stuff. His father would take him out and ask him, do you got a girlfriend and stuff like that. So the father was, he was suspicious, but he did. Every time Jeffrey tried to have a conversation with him, he would cut it off. And I was like, even though, sometimes conversations are hard to have with our kids about certain things, and certain things we just don't fucking want to know. It's just the truth. Some things we just don't want to know. But you know what? We got to give our kids a landing place, a soft landing place. Because if we can't accept and love our kids the way that they are, how is society going to accept and love them? And how are they going to even have an expectation that society loves and accept them when they can't get love and acceptance at home? So a lot of that contributed to it. But when Jeffrey started doing this old fucked up stuff, I just was like, the father taught him from a little boy how to skin, right? One of his very first victims, he skinned them. Bitch, what? But the father had already put this in him. He fed what he was afraid of. The father fed it. The father fed it. Point blank. He fed it. He didn't know what he was feeding, but at the same time, he still should have done something. But at that time of day, I don't know whether or not, they weren't into therapy or whatever, I just was like, this is all kinds of fucked up. So anyway, they go later on into doing a Dahmer, which is, his senior life. And he had always had this, Jeffrey had indicated that he always had a desire to pick up a hitchhiker. He always wanted to, pick up a hitchhiker. He had dreamed it. There was a guy that he would watch. Bitch, I'm telling you, you talk about fate. There was a guy that he would watch every day. He would purposely drive out and watch this guy run every day. And this was one of the guys that he had put his attention on. And he was like, one day I'm going to get him. So Jeffrey had loaded up his car, allegedly. No, I ain't no damn allegedly. He loaded up his motherfucking car with a baseball bat in it because he wanted to get this dude. He had watched this dude every day run. And he was like, I'm going to get this month. Although his thoughts was, or his desire was to get a hitchhiker. But this guy was an opportunity for Jeffrey. And this stuff started when Jeffrey was 17, 18 years old, bitch. So when he went the day that he put the baseball bat and stuff in the car, Jeffrey went out to go look at the guy, and the guy didn't run that day, bitch. That day, Jeffrey didn't see him. So fate had it that dude didn't get killed. But then there was a hitchhiker who was going to a concert. Now, back in the day, people used to, hitchhike quite a bit. They would, be on the road. And this guy was going to a concert, was supposed to be meeting his friends and all this kind of stuff. And then, he was took the place of the runner. Jeffrey got the dude back at the home. He had told the dude that he would drop him off, but they was going to stop by the house. They was having beers and all of that kind of stuff and just kicking the bobo. And the dude was like, all right, I'm ready to go. I got to meet my friends. Woo. Jeffrey doesn't want him to leave because he's like, everybody leaves me. And that was not a lie. Everybody left Jeffrey because they left Jeffrey up in that fucking house for I don't know how long by himself. And so Jeffrey got into, an altercation with the dude because the dude was like, I'm up out of here. And he hit him, with some weights. And when once he hit him with the weights, dude was like, okay. Thank you so much, Waddles, for the $5 super chat. Nature versus nurture. Nature is loading. Okay, I can't repeat that. Okay, thank you, boo. So, thank you so much, Waddles, for the $5 super chat. I can't read that out loud because if it come up in the transcript, it's gonna be there. So, so he hit the dude, and he said it wasn't his intention to kill him. And this was his first one. The first time he committed this kind of crime. But it fulfilled a fantasy that he had. And that fantasy was to catch him a good old hitchhiker. The problem with Jeffrey is that Jeffrey started connecting the things that he was doing to I'm trying to say this in a way where I don't get flagged, to actual acts, to acts of intimacy. Let's say intimacy. We're going to use that. After he did this to this guy, and he, hit him with the barbell, and then he strangled him, he would do different things to them. Because he connected this to intimacy. He attempted to go to college. He fucked up there. He attempted to join the army. He got just honorably discharged from there. And he worked jobs. Everything he did was a failure. Jeffrey did not commit a crime for 9 years, right? But when he started living with his grandmother, he moved to live with his grandmother in Milwaukee. That's when he began the murders and being a cannibal. His first victim was a 24-year-old named Steven, who he picked up from a bar and took back to a hotel. Now, this is in season 1, episode 4, The Good Boy Box. From high school to the army, Jeff struggles to find stability while living with his grandmother's at his grandmother's house. Jeff begins targeting young boys at the gay club. And so he would go to these clubs, these bathhouses, and he would have these encounters. They found out through one of the guys getting away that he had started using these drugs, and they banned him from the bathhouse. Jeffrey's impulse had gotten so bad that this bitch was doing this in public. In public. In public. He went in there. He met a guy named Steven. And He took Stephen back to a hotel. When he took Stephen to the hotel, he said he had no intention of doing anything to him, but he woke up and the man's ribs was broken. His face was smashed in, and he didn't know how the fuck he did it. He just woke up and the dude was like that. He didn't turn himself in. Instead, he went and got a suitcase. And he took and put the man in the suitcase and left out the fucking hotel. When Jeffrey said that he did when he committed the first murder, he said that he sat there and watched television to see if this person's name would come up on a news channel or, in the paper. And when he never saw anything, he said, bitch, I just got away with murder. So some of the men that he targeted them and they had no family. And I think that a lot of them didn't have family because at that time, again, as I said, it was taboo to be gay. It was taboo. And so a lot of people were disowned and thrown out of their homes. And they had to make it the best way that they could. Jeffrey, in my opinion, targeted them for multiple reasons. Wasn't just about the intimacy that he felt. He knew that they were despondent. He knew that they were the outcasts of society because he knew that he was. Because he was outcast by his own family. He wasn't able to be who he was. He just wasn't able to be who he was. He wanted to create someone who would be totally submissive to him. And so this stuff started getting creepier, bitch, and creepier. He brought the body of the gentleman back to his grandmother's house in a suitcase. And then he dismembered the body and broke up the bones. And he took the man's head and put it inside of a brown box that his grandmother had used to keep her son's, Jeffrey's dad's, pictures, awards, trophies, accomplishments. He took that box. Do you know that father told him to get that box back in one of the episodes, and that Jeffrey almost got caught by the father? He took the head of this gentleman and put it in a trash can when the father went downstairs because he refused to give the father the key to the box. So while the father went downstairs, he took this dude's kid, put it in the trash can, and the father saw an empty box. But I'm saying, why didn't he smell that? Could it have been that the father, because he had been doing all these things with Jeffrey, was just totally immune to the smell? Could he have not smelled that? Why didn't the grandmother smell it? The grandmother did smell some stuff, but it was something that's underneath that was under the house. That in that same year, just a few weeks later, Jeffrey took a 14-year-old by the name of James by luring him back to his grandmother's house with the promise of $50. And this person, he This is when he started collecting the bones. And then in March of the same year, Jeffrey took the life of Richard, who was 22 years old, by offering him $50. And this is when he really started drugging his victims before performing acts. And then 1 year later, in March of 1989, he took the life of Anthony Sears. Between these two murders, he was convicted of second-degree assault against a 13-year-old boy who wasn't forced to serve prison time. In many ways, Dahmer's killing timeline is a result of ineffective policing in a systematically racist and homophobic society. Because this boy was Asian. And he came stumbling out his grandmother's house. He knew that, Jeffrey had went to his grandmother's house because, he wanted to get back into religion and, he wanted to save his life. But his impulses had gotten so bad that he started doing this in his grandma's house. His grandma saw the boy stumbling out of the house. And the only reason why Jeffrey didn't go after this boy is because she was knocking on the window. But he was sitting have dinner with his grandmother every fucking day. And act like nothing happened when he had started bringing his stuff back to the house. To his grandmother's. And he moved with his grandmother so he could get his fucked up ass. You know what? This got so bad. He had Raymond. He was a 32-year-old worker. After giving him $50. The thing that made Raymond different than everybody else is that this was the first time that Jeffrey started taking pictures of them. He would put them in these positions and call it art to himself. He said that he started doing cannibalism because everybody left him. And if they left him, he wanted them to be a part of him. So that's why he started doing that. It was amazing in the episode how he went to Miss Glenda's house when they told him he had to get the fuck out the building. And he took Miss Glenda a sandwich. And Miss Glenda was scared-ish. She had been up late at night hearing all kinds of stuff. She was hearing him drilling in the middle of the night. She was hearing people screaming. She knew what was going on. She would call 911 and they'd be like, we'll send somebody out there, and never was sending anybody out there. You know why? Because they had gotten so used to them calling about Jeffrey. And they realized Jeffrey White, he ain't doing this stuff that these black women are saying he's doing. Even to the point where he had one of his victims who was, I think, later found out that he was 14 years old, bitch. Now, right now, we are in episode 16. Are we in episode 16? Yeah. No. We're in episode 5. Episode 5 is with the team. Episode 6 is Silence. An aspiring model, Tony, moves to Madison. Okay, we're not there yet. So we're in between episode 4 and episode 5, where he has this young boy who was standing outside with his friends, panhandling and begging. How many times have we gone by our local convenience store or whatever, and we see, people panhandling in front of the store? So this young boy, they wanted alcohol. They were young. So he went in there and got it for them because he knew that they was in need. When they Came back out, he had the little brew for the guy, and the guy followed him home. 14 years old. But he lied about his age. But bitch, I'm telling you right now, when you get to be a certain age, you know a kid. And that's what I say about these people who do this weird stuff. You know a kid when you see a kid. I don't care how that girl's body is framed or how that boy's body is framed. You know a child when you see a child. And when they go to open up their mouth, that's the stamp right there. This a fucking child. He takes him home, and this is the first person that he decides that he is going to put a hole in their head and put some medicine or something in there because he wanted to create living zombies. The boy manages to get out the apartment. He is walking and stumbling down the street. They call the popo. The popo come, and Jeffrey tells him that he is not only an adult, but that he's his boyfriend and he's drunk. This guy is bleeding out of his head. He can't talk. But he got enough to walk. And those police officers allowed Jeffrey to escort this boy back into that apartment. These 3 black women are out there begging them and telling them he is a minor. They're trying to save his life because they know he is weird and he's doing in his apartment. And those white police officers take him back, escort him back up to the apartment with Jeffrey and leave him. You know why? Because they were homosexual. And it was taboo to be that. And they ain't want to be bothered. And then the other police officer, when he got in the car, said he needed to clean himself up. The fuck? And so these 2 police officers were suspended because by the time Tony Edwards got all of this out, they had to do something. How could they miss all of this? They missed all of this. This woman is calling, she is hearing people screaming and bumping, and then she hears all this drilling and sink and water in the sink. She's been trying to tell these people for eons. At the end of the day, Jeffrey single-handedly killed 17 men. 17 men. 17. And with the exception of one, every other one that he murdered were people of color. At the end of the day, when they caught him, they had the audacity to reinstate those police officers who later on started harassing, allegedly, in the Netflix series. They showed these 2 same police officers harassing the young boy's father that got away, the 13-year-old, 14-year-old. They had settlements. They got money. But we all know that money doesn't solve everything. And money doesn't bring your child back. It doesn't bring that human being back. Jeffrey got his ass locked up, went to trial, and became a celebrity. There were people who was writing Jeffrey, asking for autographs, sending him money. And then he took his ass to jail and started taking the food on his tray and stacking it in a way where it looked like human body parts. And then he would take ketchup and put ketchup on the top of it. And there was a guy that was in jail who said, bitch, no, you ain't gonna do this. While he was in jail, he decided to give his life back to Christ. But yet he was a celebrity in jail. The whole time he was in jail, he had to have an escort. Because, bitch, they knew somebody was going to get him. Dude went to a library. What was his name? Damn it. I'm coming. Christopher Scarver was in the prison with him, and he got sick of him. He, I think, had some mental problems his damn self, but he had some articles that he was walking around with that he kept on his person. A guard came and got Jeffrey and and one other cellmate and had them cleaning up the gym. The guy said that they touched him on his back. He said he went up to Jeffrey and asked Jeffrey, in this article, it accuses you of doing X, Y, and Z. Did you do this? And Jeffrey said, yeah, because Jeffrey was a celebrity. He began to get privileges in jail that nobody else was getting because so many people were writing him and sending him money, putting books on his money on his books. Thank you so much, CC, for the $9.99 super chat. I'm trying to take this story serious, but your storytelling is humorous. I'm sorry, boo. I'm just, that's just my personality. It's a serious story. But thank you, boo. Chris Garver killed him in that jail cell. And it was so wild because the same day that Jeffrey was getting baptized, they was killing, they executed, oh my God, John Wayne Gacy. Same day. But this dude killed him because he said he ain't gonna keep doing this. When he read what the dude did, he couldn't believe it. After Jeffrey was murdered in jail, 2 years after, wait a minute, when he assaulted a 13-year-old little boy, the judge said that he can go on a work release program, that he reminded him of his fucking grandson in front of his family. Jeffrey's mother and father began to blame each other. But Jeffrey's father realized that father is hurting. But he never changed his behavior. Later on in the episode, I think it was episode 8 and 9, the father first was trying to say that Jeffrey didn't need to be in jail. He wasn't a candidate for jail. He just needed to be in a mental hospital. Nah, bitch. Your son was a serial killer. The father began to tell his wife, his second wife, that he had these same fantasies. And that's what I meant earlier about the mirror. Because he said he fantasized too about committing certain crimes. His mother was on drugs. And although she tried to get her life together, she goes over to the family's house and tells the family, can they please put a good word in there for him so he don't fucking go to jail? They condemned that building. And they said that they were going to put a park in place, something to memorialize all of these people. But they didn't. Allegedly, the ground still looks the same. They never did anything. These people had gotten to the point where they were so scared to sleep in their apartments when they were allowed to come back in, because they all had to leave because the whole building was considered a crime scene, that they would sleep downstairs in the hallway together with pillows and books. And they were told that they couldn't do it anymore. One of the saddest ones, I think, for me was the death of Tony. Tony's death devastated me because he was deaf and he really, really liked Jeffrey. And bitch, he almost got the fuck away. But he left some at the apartment, bitch, and had to come back. And when he came back, he offed him. His mama was fighting like hell to try to find her son who was deaf. He would sit there with Jeffrey and they would write on a notepad. And one of the most, the thing that stuck with me was when Jeffrey asked him, was it hard for him or tiring for him to write everything down? And he said, you're worth it. And because of his insecurity and his old fucked up ass self, he couldn't even have that relationship because he was a selfish lover. He only loved one way. He would do things to these men that he, while they were in these, after having drunk this concoction that he would make up. But he couldn't do that stuff with them while he was awake. He couldn't do it. Y'all, if you really want to see something that is different, gives you some history, will make you cry, but help you understand, watch this movie. Again, I was living back in those days in 1991. I was about to finish. Was I about to? 91. Bitch, was it 81? Bitch, I'm trying to remember what I was doing in 91. But I lived through this and I don't remember it. And I know that there have been other docuseries and things like that, and I wasn't interested in, but I was interested in this. Netflix did a good job of telling the story from the victim's perspective, seeing the effect that it had. I remember when Glenda went to the funeral of the young boy. They weren't able to find everything, but they found enough of his body to have a proper memorial and funeral for him. And just her coming into the funeral and having to tell the father, I tried to save your 14-year-old son, but I wasn't heard. When Jesse Jackson came to visit her, because back in the day, Jesse Jackson, bitch, if there's a crime, here he is. And she said, I've been trying to tell this story. I've been trying to tell the police and nobody hears me. And Jesse Jackson said, I hear you, Glenda. Glenda was a warrior. She was a fighter. She was a fighter. And all they gave her was a plaque. And she told them when she took that plaque out, she said, I'll take this award on one condition, and that is that you all do better. She even tried to fight for the park that they were supposed to put in place, and they didn't. And Glenda said, the lady told her that she was going to have to wait. And Glenda said, that's all I do is wait. She waited for the police. She waited for justice to be fair. She waited for equality for everybody. She waited for many things, but she waited for Jeffrey to get caught. That was the only thing I saw that Glenda got, because everything else she didn't. And here we are in 2022, and we're still waiting. We're waiting for the same things that she waited for back in the 80s and the 90s. And it's just sad. But it's a story that you need to hear. Again, as I said, many of the victims begin to be compensated for the hurt, the pain, the devastation that they went through. But there's nothing you can do to bring these families back. Nothing. So, yeah, I watched it. It was good, but it was painful too. And sometimes when they tell a story this way, it helps you to understand that there are people who have serious mental illness, who need help, and how the system was set up and is set up systematically to not always believe or value people of color. But you are valuable. We hear you. This is the end of my review. This bitch will not be monetized. Because of the graphic nature of this story. So, though I've never asked, if you would like to at the end of the video to give a super chat, super thanks at the end of this video, it will be much appreciated. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you to my moderators for always keeping the room nice and safe. And thank you to all of you all who listen to this review. God bless you. And until we meet again, y'all, be safe.